So I was having a hard time deciding what exactly would be my first actual video since I started streaming. Maybe I was overthinking it, trying to make it something significant. Uh, I didn't want to be lazy and just start clipping out, portions of the live stream. But fundamentally, this is just a hobby for me. I'll never be here asking you for money like the rest of these opportunists for simply sharing my opinion, for doing what anybody should do, which is to educate themselves on these topics and sharing their opinion. That's not real work. At the very least, that is the minimum one should do if you could properly articulate, you know, the information you've processed. So if you're new here, like and subscribe, but fundamentally, please, please, if you take anything away from this video, from this channel, don't feed the streamers. Do not pay video essayists. You work too hard for that. You work way too hard to fund somebody's hobby. We're narcissists enough to be on here and think that somehow you should be listening to us, hearing our opinions, that the way that we process information and the way that we digest it, the way that we break everything down is somehow worth listening to. That is sufficient. But we have a culture on here of individuals trying to make this their actual job, not organizing, not helping their community, not doing the actual work, not being activists. No, just sharing their opinions. They want to cash in on the fact that there really isn't sufficient voices on the left. That's what this channel is about. But the reason why I started it was to combat liberal propaganda. So I found it, fitting to do it to the king of liberal propaganda, Jon Stewart. Listen, I'm a 90s baby. All right. So I grew up at a perfect time to where Jon Stewart was running the whole game. There was really no YouTube or alternative uh, media source to compete with Jon Stewart taking down corporate media. Never mind who runs and owns Comedy Central. So yeah, there's a soft spot for him in my heart. That was kind of overtaken by Colbert, but see, I had to see and witness Colbert grovel, bend the knee to get the Tonight Show. At the very least, Jon Stewart left, and now he's back. He's kind of been back, right? With the whole Apple show, his podcast, everything. But now he's back to the Daily Show. And I was wondering why. The man's rich enough, he's old enough. He doesn't really seem to enjoy it like he used to. So what was it? I'm sure the money didn't hurt. I'm sure getting, the ability to dictate his schedule and how much control he has over the Daily Show now did not hurt. But that couldn't be the only reason, not why he wanted to come back, but why they brought him back. Oh, it's the ratings. Sure, without a doubt, they were struggling. We know this. However, what is the power behind a show like The Daily Show? What is accomplished? Honestly, like, we're at a point where you could watch me spew, my nonsense about politics. You can watch countless other streamers who will ask you for money for their opinions. In a lot of ways, Jon Stewart really led whatever this is now. People thinking that somehow they're the voice of reason in the room. Right? So, Jon Stewart's back. And even before I had this, this feeling that what he truly is a mouthpiece for the establishment, a limited hangout, and not even that far. He ain't hanging that far out, right? But what it is a way to capture an audience that doesn't feel seen or heard by mainstream media. And it's in a comedic format, which you know, is very easy to digest, to take in. So Jon Stewart is back. And unfortunately, his faults, his weaknesses, his spinelessness, his cowardness is in the forefront. So let's break down this video. None other than a video where Jon Stewart really demonstrates what he's been about this entire time. And we'll go back and we'll look at some of his most infamous, interviews, of his appearance against Tucker Carlson, who we'll see essentially took Jon Stewart's format, his character, but used it for the right. The anti-established, you know, truth teller. So let's pull it up and break it down here. Starting off with this. This is this goes to show, please go check out Dr. Jared Ball on Black Power Media. I mix what I like as well as Earn Your Liberation. His whole thing is breaking down propaganda, primarily the propaganda of Black buying power. He has a book called The Myth of Black buying power. Check it out. It's amazing. It's great work. The man's hilarious. So I'm going to, harness my inner Dr. Ball here and break down why is it that the Daily Show, Jon Stewart, chose out of all images to use a crescent moon, right? To use the word futile, to highlight, crescent. Now, I might be missing the joke. Sure, this might be a reference to something. That's not really the point here. I'm not here to critique his, comedic styles. That is irrelevant and too subjective. But what I am here to say is this is blatant propaganda. Liberal Zionist propaganda at its core. Why not have a Star of David? Why not have something to depict the fact that it's Israel's making this a futile situation? This quagmire that they're in is none other than Israel's fault. And it will always be because it is a European settler colonial project meant to, be a foothold of European civilization in the so-called Middle East. So why is it that the crescent moon, which is associated with Islam, is being associated with futility here? As if somehow it is the fault of the crescent, the Muslims, that we can't find a resolution here. All right, now you might be saying, bro, you're like going too deep, you're overanalyzing it. Sure, that's what we're here to do. However, what he says in this video and in an interview after this highlights that he is a liberal Zionist to the core. And the way that he speaks about the topic sounds amazing, sounds wonderful, it's inviting, but fundamentally supports the ideology of white supremacy, meaning it supports the safety of a European settler colonial project. All right, say that 5 times. So let's go through the video. And I really would like this not to get taken down. So we're going to go snippet by snippet, clip by clip. Again, I'm just going to skip over the dad jokes. Immediately the disclaimer. All right.
Palestine is not meant to endorse or justify all the actions of either side. Mentions of Hamas that fail to condemn Hamas do not mean we don't condemn Hamas. Do not listen to this segment if you're predisposed to anti-Semitism or Islamophobia.
Let's break it down there. And you'll see here the whole middle of the road already. Criticizing Israel doesn't mean we support and doesn't mean we're failing to condemn Hamas. Okay, awesome. The sign of any spineless liberal is to condemn Hamas, to not support a liberation force. They want peace. They want a Gandhi that they could kick around and make a saint after his death.
Don't condemn Hamas. Do not listen to this segment if you're predisposed to anti-Semitism or Islamophobia.
Do not listen to this segment if you're predisposed to anti Semitism or Islamophobia. What does anti Semitism has to do with Zionism? Well, I'll tell you what it has to do with it. Is that Zionists are anti Semitic as hell. There's no argument there. The way that they try conflating all Jews to Israel is anti Semitic. It is inherently anti Semitic because the founders of Israel, the European founders of Israel, were anti Semitic and didn't believe that European Jews could exist alongside European Christians. They believe the lie, right? This anti Semitic Nazi propaganda that European Jews were somehow not European. That is anti Semitic. To view Jewish people as a monolith, as all owing allegiance to Israel, to all being Zionists, is anti Semitic. So already we see off the bat the conflation between anti Zionism and anti Semitism and equating it to Islamophobia. And Islamophobia, again, is a prerequisite to being a Zionist because you, as a settler, colonial project, need to breed hatred towards the indigenous population. All right.
Anti-Semitism or Islamophobia. Common side effects of discussing the Middle East are depression, anxiety, infections of the perineum, and craving hummus.
So there we go. We're off to great jokes. We'll go back a little bit to 113 here. All right.
Anything but the reigns of a couple. Well, folks, this is an awful situation. We're coming off on 5 months of a brutal bombing campaign brought on by a horrific massacre and hostage taking. And we.
So there we have it. A brutal bombing campaign. Mind you, not a genocide, right? Just a bombing campaign that was initiated, that was brought upon by a horrific massacre. Mind you, most of the settler Zionists that died on October 7th were at the hands of the Zionist entity. The Hannibal Directive demands that the Israeli soldiers remove any possibility of hostages being taken. Because when Palestinian resistance forces are able to take hostages, they're able to negotiate a hostage exchange. And the last thing that Israel wants to do is release, their hostages because they come out and reveal the torturous conditions, the inhumane conditions that they're being forced to experience, often with no charges at all, no trial. The sexual assault, the rapes that they have to go through, the force feedings, right? The starvation, all these things. So Israel wants to make sure that they're never put in a position where they have to negotiate. And that's the reason why Palestinian resistance forces wanted to take hostages for a hostage exchange. But that's not mentioned here. Who cares why it occurred? There can be no justifiable reason for indigenous people, Palestinians, to use force against their oppressors, the colonial, oppressors that they face on the daily. Let's move along to a little further here. Well, we already see all the issues and the biased point of view that this is all coming from. To the T, a liberal Zionist at his core.
The United States is Israel's closest ally, Israel's big brother in the fraternity of nations, Israel's work emergency contact.
There's another thing that we're going to be seeing. It's the downplaying between the relationship of the US and Israel. Again, we're not here to criticize the dad jokes. It is what it is. But what I will highlight is that we're not their closest ally. The US is not the closest ally of Israel. It's the puppeteer of Israel. From its inception, Israel was meant to serve as a, European, as a civilization outpost in the savage region, the so-called Middle East, right? Theodore Herzl, advocated for the existence of Israel in the region to bring civilization, to be a foothold, to earn Europeans, Jews, their place into whiteness through settler colonialism. That's what it is. So for the US, having taken over as the empire, as a European empire and superpower, they also took over, essentially as a satellite state, Israel. That's why we protect them. That's why we fund them. That's why we excuse their atrocities, their crimes against humanity. In the UN, we're always there beside them. So no, we're not just their big brother, right? We're their life giver. We're the reason why they continue to exist. The reason why they're able to conduct a genocide uninterrupted and excused. It's the downplaying. And we're going to see it. We're going to see other countries accuse the United States of not just allowing a genocide to happen, but participating in the genocide, because it would not be occurring without the United States. This isn't something, that Joe Biden is trying to push against. This is something that the US empire wants because of the increased influence in the region that China has, not to mention Russia's connection to Syria. So for Joe Biden, for the US empire, if they could completely remove, the Palestinian problem, the indigenous people of that region, and strengthen and complete the European Zionist settler colonial project in that region, that is a victory. That secures a military base in that area without struggle from the neighboring sellouts like the Saudis and the Egyptians. All right. Let's pull it up here.
Position doesn't seem so tenable. Perhaps I can find some diplomatic leeway in the Hamas position.
Israel is a country that has no place on our land. We must remove that country.
Does that mean the annihilation of Israel?
Yes, of course.
I cannot find diplomatic leeway in the Hamas position.
So something liberals love to do is equating the oppressed with their oppressors, the settlers with the native population. They're both villains, and only the liberal standing between them in the middle of the road is the rational being. Only through the liberal can you reach peace. When in reality, what is being said here is that if you remove the names and just simply state what they are, an indigenous person here saying that we need to eradicate the existence of the settler colonial project on their land. Now, why would anybody oppose that unless you support colonization? You see, you have to detach the propaganda, the names, the so-called illusion of the reality that they want to paint. If you say you want the extermination of Israel, you are anti-Semitic. Okay, what if you say you want the extermination of a European white supremacist settler colonial project? What then? Well, then suddenly you're on the right side of history, when in fact that is a reality. That is a reality, but the propaganda has made it so that to state facts means that you're anti-Semitic, means that you need to be silenced and censored. But here we have Jon Stewart saying, oh wow, aren't they both crazy? Aren't both political leaders on this issue too extreme? Come to me, my children. I'll lead you back to the promised land of liberalism. That's why Jon Stewart is back. Jon Stewart is back to corral anybody too far to the left back to the center. That's why they paid him and gave him all this control. That's what he serves. He serves empire fundamentally to his core, or else he wouldn't be on air, or else they wouldn't be paying him all this money, regardless of the ratings, regardless how desperate they are to get attention again. All right.
Why? Why do you? We could use that. We have a housing crisis. Give us back our building. This is not right.
Condemning Hamas.
The immediate ceasefire in Gaza has failed.
Western nations voted against it.
It was delayed 4 times this week.
Draft resolution has not been adopted.
Why do you even have a building?
A UN Security Council draft resolution to allow aid delivery has been vetoed.
Russia and China used their veto against an American resolution condemning Hamas.
All right. This is the part here.
The immediate Security Council draft resolution to allow aid
Listen here.
delivery
Russia and
has been
China.
vetoed.
Russia and China used their veto against an American resolution condemning Hamas.
So you see how this is all interconnected? You have the Russophobia and the yellow peril, China. They're in the right, folks. For all my criticisms of China, and the laundry list of criticism of Russia, be aware, they're in the right position here. Because to condemn Hamas, for the U.S. to go out of their way to further villainize resistant forces against settler colonialism is nothing but white supremacist PR, right? That's all they're trying to do. They're trying to further villainize the on-the-ground indigenous resistant forces.
The immediate ceasefire in Gaza has failed.
Western nations voted against it.
It was delayed.
All right. Here's when you really see how bad, how hardcore of a Zionist Jon Stewart is, and the way that the propaganda is filtered through liberalism kind of seems, like reasonable. And that's the objective.
And while Saudi Arabia does not accept Palestinian refugees, and Egypt doesn't either.
You see that? You see, it's just a slick little throwaway line. Saudi Arabia doesn't accept Palestinian refugees, and neither does Egypt. Mind you, Saudi Arabia was about to normalize relationships with Israel before October 7th. Egypt had already sold out Palestinians. But that's not enough. That's not enough for a Zionist. And for liberal Zionists, their objective is to make Saudi Arabia and Egypt look like villains, not for aligning with Israel, a European settler colonial project, but for refusing to aid the Zionist state in the ethnic cleansing and the expulsion of Palestinians by simply accepting Palestinians on their land. Why not? Because to a Zionist, to a white supremacist, to a racist, all of these brown Muslims are the same. So why can't we just push them out and force them to live among their same people? That's why this whole idea of like, well, you have all these Muslim countries. Why can't the Zionists have one of their own? Well, none of those other countries are settler colonial projects. Sure, they're horrible. And again, we have a laundry list of reasons to detest them and to support their people. However, they are not settler colonial projects, and they're not Europeans imposing themselves on the region. So the fact that the liberal icon himself, the voice of the left here, Jon Stewart, returns, and what he does is spread Zionist propaganda by subtly, like a liberal does, making you think, just quickly, making you think, the Saudis and the Egyptians should really allow Palestinian refugees to enter because that's the righteous thing to do. That's the kind thing to do, to accept these refugees. Mind you, he doesn't highlight or express the fact that this is exactly what the Zionist state wants in order to complete their ethnic cleansing, their expulsion of the indigenous population, the Palestinians, to never allow them to return. Meanwhile, Jon Stewart could go to Israel today and get a great house with a great view. This isn't something nitpicky. This is exactly what Zionist propaganda is. It's just filtered. That's why liberals are deadlier than these rabid right-wingers.
So Israel, the United States, the United Nations, the Arab nations, no one seems to be incentivized to stop the suffering of the innocent people in this region. Now, I didn't want to bring this up, but there is another player. Small religious startup out of Bethlehem.
Then here he goes on a tirade about Christian nationalists, which you should. But let's hear this again.
So Israel, the United States, the United Nations, the Arab nations, no one seems to be incentivized to stop the suffering of the innocent people in this region.
When he says that nobody's incentivized to stop the suffering of the innocent people of the region, he doesn't say to stop the suffering of Palestinians. He says to stop the suffering of the people in this region. Why wouldn't you just say Palestinians? Wouldn't that just be easier? Wouldn't that be more direct? Well, no. Because see, he's including Zettler, Zionists in the whole innocence, right? The innocent people in his mind are not just the Palestinians suffering a genocide, but also the Zionist settlers. You see how liberals equate the colonizer with the colonized, the oppressed with the oppressor? They hold equal value to them. They're both equally at fault and equally in the right. And it's subtle and it's quick, And it happens usually between transitions that you see this liberal Zionist propaganda get pushed. But this is why Jon Stewart is back. Because it sounds nice. It sounds wonderful. And it normalizes Zionism. Because fundamentally, what this will accomplish is the safety and security of the Zionist settler colonial project. And he'll say it. He'll clearly say it. All right, let's pull this up next. And you guys see it. Y'all see how the crescent moon, the symbolism of Islam, of Muslims, never truly gets off screen. But how often have we seen a Star of David here? The Zionist flag. It makes you think.
The status quo cycle of provocation and retribution is predicated on some idea that one of these groups is going to go away, and they are not.
So here's where he starts breaking everything down. No excuses, no jokes. Hear it again.
Cycle of provocation and retribution is predicated on some idea that one of these groups is going to go away, and they are not.
Essentially saying this cycle of violence, of provocation, is predicated on the idea that one of these groups is going to leave and they're not. Well, one group, the settlers, the colonizers, are attempting with all their might to completely push out the indigenous population once and for all. While the resistance forces were trying to dethrone their colonizers. And we've seen it time and time again. The Vietnamese did it with the French and then the US. It's happened. Angola, it's happened. Now we've seen where it fails to be a complete liberation. And we see it in South Africa. You have a lot of people here saying, oh, we need to end apartheid. Apartheid is a tool of settler colonialism. It is not the main issue. You won't resolve the real problem of settler colonialism by removing apartheid. We see it in South Africa. South Africa was a failure. Mandela compromised, sold out the true revolutionary movement in that region. And that's why we so see that the individuals who hold the land, the resources, who control the means of production in that area are still the white Europeans. And we know that there's countless of reactionary forces in that area in South Africa crying over a white genocide, waiting to rise up again when they should have been expelled. Oh, you're advocating a white genocide? No, I'm advocating the removal of white supremacists from a non-white country for their own safety. Their oppressors, their colonizers. People that are actually down, people that are willing to give up on their whiteness to combat whiteness to their full capabilities are always more than welcome to remain, right? Because they're not a threat. They're not upholding white supremacy. But if you allow these individuals to live amongst you, to be your neighbors, they're just waiting and plotting for the day that they can enslave you again, the day that they can murder you again without any repercussion.
Real here. The status quo cycle of provocation and retribution is predicated on some idea that one of these groups is going to go away, and they are not. If we want a safe and free Israel and a safe and free Palestine, we have to recognize that reality. And I know that there is a twisted and much contested history in the region that has brought us to this point. But we are at this point. And Israel and a safe and fusion.
You see how quickly it goes, how soon it moves into equating the settler and the colonizer without hesitation. This is what liberal Zionists are meant to do. This is their objective.
Is predicated on some idea that one of these groups is going to go away. And they are not. If we want a safe and free Israel and a safe and free Palestine.
You see that? The only reason you would want a safe and free Israel if you're a Zionist. If you're a Zionist, then that's what you want. A safe Israel. Free to who? Free to do what? To claim the lands that they colonized already, that they conquered through force? Safe to maintain a settler colonial project that's rooted in white supremacy? There is no such thing as a free Palestine with the continued existence of their colonizers. You cannot have both, but liberals will lead you to believe that somehow there's a compromise. That the rational thing for the native population is to compromise with their oppressors. Not to resist, not to fight back, not to continue the struggle for liberation, for decolonization, for the return to their homeland, the return of their land. No, not that. That's irrational. You have to allow the white supremacists to win. Any land that is still occupied by the Zionist settler colonial state, any land at all, is a victory. Is a victory to colonization, a victory to white supremacy.
We have to recognize that reality. And I know that there is a twisted and much contested history in the region that has brought us to this point. But
and this is the liberals' favorite thing to do, to muddle the waters. He states, I know there's a twisted and complicated history of the region. Is there, though?
A safe and free Israel and a safe and free Palestine. We have to recognize that reality. And I know that there is a twisted and much contested history in the region that has brought us to this point.
There is a twisted and much contested history. Well, the history is quite simple. There's Palestinians living in Palestine who were Christian, Muslim, and Jewish. And because Europe is so anti-Semitic, the most anti-Semitic place in the world, European Jews were sick and tired of not being seen as white. So they said, all right, we'll leave. But allow us to buy into our whiteness through colonization. Through colonizing this region of the world that is valuable to you. Nobody was quite aware how valuable it would be. And let us show you that we can also be white. That we could also be white supremacists, despite all the horrors, all the pogroms, all the massacres that you've put us through. Let us do that unto others to earn our whiteness. That is the objective of the European Zionist settler colonial project in the so-called Middle East. Because they're not just going to stop with Palestine. That was never the goal. That was never their goal, just to stop at Palestine. But liberal Zionists, and Zionists in general, want you to think that it's a complicated, contested, and twisted history. No, it isn't. If you have any doubt, study how they treat the indigenous Jews of that region. They're regulated to second-class citizens. They are poor of the poor in the settler Zionist state of Israel. If it was all about being Jewish, you wouldn't see that. But it's about being European with a veneer of Judaism in order to uphold Zionism. So you see clearly what side Jon Stewart is. Despite him claiming, as all liberals do, to be in the middle, to not be an extremist. What they do is they always capitulate and give a victory to white supremacists, to settlers, to colonists, at the cost of the total liberation of indigenous people. They always sell out the oppressed.
But we are at this point, and anything we do from here has to look forward. So
And they always want you looking forward because they're going to stab you in the back. All right. He gives all these jokes of solutions and finally arrives to something serious, according to him.
and heaven forbid, I actually think this last one could work. Starting now, no preconditions, no earned trust, no partners for peace. Israel stops bombing. Hamas releases the hostages. The Arab countries who claim Palestine as their top priority come in and form a demilitarized zone between Israel and a free Palestinian state. The Saudis, Egypt, UAE, Qatar, Jordan, they all form like a NATO arrangement guaranteeing security for both sides. Obviously,
All right, let's break that down.
they won't call it NATO.
Before his horrific punchline, let's break that down.
Could work. Starting now.
Starting now, starting today.
No preconditions, no earned trust, no partners for peace. Israel.
Starting now, meaning erase the history of settler colonialism, the reality that these are European invaders. With no prerequisite, no justice for their crimes. Starting now, this is liberal Zionism at its core. Oh, the past, how Israel, the Zionist entity, originated through colonialism is not important. Let's focus on today. October 7th is the start for them. Because their main objective is to secure the existence of this white supremacist settler colonial project. That is their main objective. Unlike the rabid Zionists who want it all, they're willing to compromise in order to continue to flourish, in order for this settler colonial project to continue to exist. Because the longer it exists, the more justified in its existence, its right to continue to exist.
Stops bombing. Hamas releases the hostages.
You hear that? Starting now, Israel stops bombing and Hamas releases the hostages. Well, the Palestinian Liberation Force is very clear why they took hostages. And that is not for the bombing to start, but to negotiate the release of Palestinian hostages held by the Zionist state. Men, women, and children being tortured, held hostage by the Zionist state, something that this entire time Jon Stewart does not bring up because he does not care about them. He does not care why Palestinians resisted. He only cares that there's Europeans' lives at risk. And his solution to it is, oh, you won't get your hostages released. We'll just have the genocide pause for now. Sorry, not a genocide, just a bombing, according to this liberal Zionist.
The Arab countries who claim Palestine as their top priority come in and form a demilitarized zone between Israel and a free Palestinian state.
You see how nice that sounds? Oh, a free Palestinian state. I support that. Mind you, you completely ignore the first half, which is of safe Israel, meaning that he wants a European settler colony to be protected, to be safeguarded. How is that not being a white supremacist? How is that any different from a European, African, in Africa, wanting the South African government to continue to exist, but just separately? Just separately. yeah, black Africans can have part of South Africa, but we'll have our section here. So it is even more regressive than the selling out of the decolonization of South Africa. He's essentially wanting a North and South Korea, but with Israel and Palestine. But at least in the North South Korea, where it is a proxy state of the United States, it is a puppet regime, South Korea. At least you can make the argument it's not a settler colonial project, which is exactly what Israel is, which is what Jon Stewart wants to be safe and secure. A settler colonial project rooted in white supremacy is what he wants to be safe and secure. And Palestinians share your crumbs. This is not the first time that Jon Stewart has done this. He wraps up here with his little
Saudis,
joke.
Egypt, UAE, Qatar, Jordan, they all form like a NATO arrangement guaranteeing security for both sides.
Guaranteeing security for both sides. You see why I'm not reaching, why I'm not exaggerating here? It is very clear, it is very evident that he is a Zionist because he wants the safety and security of the Zionist state. He's not calling for the liberation of all Palestinian land. He's not calling for decolonization. He's not calling for land back. He's not calling for liberation. He's calling for the safety and security of a Zionist state alongside whatever breadcrumbs Palestinians are able to hold on to. But once they become a state, and there's forces still wanting to return back to their homes, to their lands, to their literal homes that they still have the key to, well, now it's a state versus state thing, and you could properly eradicate them once and for all without being accused of a genocide. It's just one state defending itself against a foreign state. That is the objective of the two-state solution of a liberal Zionist. It's the go around. A rabid Zionist just wants to eradicate and ethnically cleanse, genocide Palestinians outright. A liberal Zionist wants to find the legal maneuvering to do so. Grant them a state, they will attack because they will not compromise. Native people will never surrender their lands completely. We give them a state, we recognize them. Once they attack, now we can eradicate them once and for all. And he's done this before. Here he is. This was back in 9 years ago.
We'll start tonight in the Middle East, where Israel.
What? Israel isn't supposed to defend itself?
Oh yeah, if Mexico bombed Texas, will we exercise
What other countries held to the same standard as Israel? People that want to destroy our terrorists? What's the matter with you? It's the only democracy in the Middle East, you
All right, well, that is how Zionists react with any criticism of Israel. Awesome. That's great. But wait, he's a liberal. So that's not sufficient. That's not enough. He has to equate both of these sides.
By Israel.
Oh, the civilians have a country. Tradition.
He doubles down. Great. Again, any criticism of Israel will mark you as being anti-Semitic. Doesn't matter if you're saying, no, I'm an anti-Zionist. You're marked as an anti-Semite, which is inherently anti-Semitic within itself. A beautiful paradox. The weaponization of identity. Europeans are unmatched at that. But what does he do after? Look at this.
Of Israel's policies is not the same thing as being pro-Hamas.
So you're against murdered children?
Free Gaza! Free Palestine! Legal occupation!
So you see this? Now, as all liberals do, he equates the colonized with the colonizers. He equates the cries, the pleas, the rationale of the oppressed to the oppressor's excuses and propaganda. This was 9 years ago. This is who Jon Stewart is. He's a liberal to the core, and he will sacrifice Palestinians, Palestinian liberation, the return of their lands, the return of their literal homes, to uphold the Zionist settler colonial project. So what does he do? What is his solution to this?
You know what?
That's it. That is the spinelessness of a liberal. You know what? Fuck it. It's too complicated. Having to justify the existence of a white supremacist European settler colonial project is too complicated. It's always that both sides are equivalent to these people. Especially when they're saying, well, one side look just like me. They truly cannot be evil. There must be something wrong with these brown savages. That they're always looking to fight, never to compromise. That they're not happy with the scraps that we give them. I do want to point something else out though here. There's a very famous segment on CNN's Crossfire where Jon Stewart appeared as a guest, and liberals love this because Jon Stewart goes after Tucker Carlson before Tucker Carlson was, the leader of the far right, the alt-right, whatever he is or was. So liberals love him. Love this clip. Love them some Jon Stewart versus Tucker Carlson. Jon Stewart makes fun of his bow tie. Holy shit, what a revolutionary hero. But let's see the hypocrisy inherent within Jon Stewart. His mind frame, his mindset, and his dodging of responsibility and accountability for the platform, the voice and influence that he has.
See, the thing is, we need your help. Right now you're helping the politicians and the corporations, and we're left out there to mow our lawns.
You said we're too rough on them when they make mistakes.
No, you're not too rough on them. You are part of their strategies. You're partisan, hacks.
You see that? You're partisan hacks. You're helping the politicians. You're out here advocating for a free and safe Israel. So who are you helping in that regard? Genocide Joe, who calls himself a Zionist? Benjamin Netanyahu? The Zionist settlers who want to push out Benjamin Netanyahu after he eradicates Palestinians because he didn't keep them safe enough? He wasn't brutal enough? They want more bombs dropped on Palestinians? They're blocking aid entering Gaza? This is who he is.
Wait, John, let me tell you something valuable that I think.
And here is where, this is why I hate liberals. They make it defend these right-wingers. Or at least they make it seem like you're defending him, when in reality it's like, no, well, he has, legitimate criticism that highlights your hypocrisy. So we'll address it properly. And here we're going to see that Jon Stewart, like the coward he is, hides behind self-deprecation to avoid accountability. And why is it that Tucker gets all the flack from this video? It's because liberals don't actually hear the way that they're able to commit like this double speak. They're used to being two faces, speaking out of both sides out of their mouths.
think we do that. I'd like to see
Something valuable?
Yeah, no, it's
I would
nice
like to hear
politicians
it.
and I'll tell you, when politicians come on,
Yeah.
it's nice to get them to try and answer the question. And in order to do that, we try to ask them pointed questions. I want to contrast our questions with some questions you asked John Kerry.
If you want to.
John Kerry at the time was the DNC's presidential candidate. And Tucker calls out Jon Stewart. All right, let's compare the questions. Let's compare how we interact with politicians. And immediately, Jon Stewart's like, I'm just a comedian. I'm just a comedian. You're interviewing a presidential candidate. You're not just a comedian. You have a responsibility to push back on them, to expose them to your audience. But let's hear his excuse.
If you want to compare your show to a comedy show, you're more than welcome to.
Here's the point.
If
Kerry doesn't have.
If that's your goal,
No, it's not.
I wouldn't aim for us. I'd aim for
Here's the
Seinfeld.
problem.
That's
Kerry
a very
won't-
good show.
Kerry won't come on this show. He will come on your show. Let me suggest why he wants.
Well,
to
we have civilized discourse. For us, I'd aim for
Here's
Seinfeld.
the problem.
That's
Kerry
a very
won't-
good show.
Kerry won't come on this
John Kerry won't come on this show. And here's the reason that Jon Stewart gives.
show. He will come on your show. Let me suggest why he wants.
Well,
to
we have civilized discourse.
Well, here.
We have civilized discourse. And I'll pull up the clip. It took me a while to find it, but I will pull up the clip of the civilized discourse after we see some highlighted questions here.
Here's an example of civilized discourse. Here are 3 of the questions you asked, John.
Yeah.
You have a chance to interview the Democratic nominee. You asked him questions such as, quote, how are you holding up? Is it hard not to take the attacks personally?
Yeah.
Have you ever flip-flopped, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah.
Didn't you feel like you got the chance to interview the guy? Why not ask him a real question instead of just
Why not ask him a real question?
suck up to him?
Yeah, how you're holding up is a real suck up, and I actually was giving him a hot stone massage. How you're holding up is a real suck up.
So he downplays it. Oh, how you holding up? Yeah, that's me sucking up. Well, you could say I was just greeting him. I was just seeing how he was doing. But again, the self-deprecation is to prevent further criticism and to downplay his role in normalizing these ghouls, these politicians. The very same thing that he's asking of others, he fails to do when he has the opportunity to do so himself. The hypocrisy is unbearable.
And I actually was giving him a hot stone massage.
It sounded that way.
As we were doing it.
It did.
You know, it's interesting to.
So let's see a little bit of this. Because Shirley Tucker is, I mean, he's garbage. He's blowing it out of proportion. He's a CIA dropout or a reject, even worse. All right. This is it. This is the interview. It took me a while to find it. No freaking way, y'all. I was just watching this. I'm not kidding you that I was just watching this. Let's just try reloading it. Wow, I'm glad I'm recording this right now. All right, we got it. Oh, that is wild. Okay. It took me a long time to find this. That I want to provide the context for it in its totality. And it starts at 47 seconds in here. We see the first initial question.
This has been it's been a rough couple of weeks. I've been following. I watch a lot of the cable news shows, so I understand that apparently you were never in Vietnam.
That's what I understand too, but I'm trying to find out what happened.
Now, is
to
it
that part of my life? I don't know.
Exactly. It's nice though. I know 35 years ago, I have friends that'll come forward and.
So you see, instead of asking him, legitimate questions, he immediately starts to almost help him defend himself against the media smears. Instead of asking him legitimate questions that the media is not willing to ask him, they're only simply willing to smear him because legitimate questions would actually put both sides of the political spectrum, right? The Republicans and Democrats in hot water because they don't want real questions. They prefer smear tactics because you could combat smear tactics without actually providing anything for the people, for the working class individuals, because it becomes personal instead about your career choices and decisions. So yeah, that's how you're doing right there.
Say, you did have cooties. You know, that sort of thing. Is it hard not to take it personally?
Too,
oh, with you as well?
Yeah.
Is it a difficult thing not to take personally when they come out and clearly your war record is it's
So you see, it's the personal of it. So my question here is, what exactly is Jon Stewart's goal? What has been his role this entire time? It's to personalize these politicians, to humanize them to you. But yet he wants others to expose them when he has the opportunity here, right then and there, he had it. But he's more concerned about how he's doing and whether or not he takes it personally. He's worried about his feelings. Now, this is exactly what these corporate mouthpieces are meant to do. The modern versions of this is this. Jimmy Fallon humanizing Donald Trump. Look at that. That is what they're meant to do. That is what Jon Stewart is. But he's such a hypocrite that he demands that others who don't have the opportunity to sit across these individuals to step up. Well, they go to you and you have these opportunities because they know you're a spineless hack. All right, that's Jimmy Fallon doing it to a Republican, Donald Trump, who, by the way, already at this point had an atrocious track record of being a racist. And recently, we saw it with, I always forget this guy's name, Seth Meyers. Look at this.
Do you enjoy playing around with the dark brand meme?
No, I resent the hell out of it.
Okay.
Look at him, struggling to put on sunglasses, y'all. So again, what is the point of these, late night hosts like Jon Stewart, Jimmy Fallon, Seth Meyers, other than to humanize these politicians, to be a State Department spokesperson? What is their point? And what gives Jon Stewart, the ability to demand others do what he is too much of a coward to do? Because he would be kicked out of the club. They would not ask him to return if he was actually combating the powerful, speaking truth to power, right? That's what I've been saying. He's been a coward this entire time. This is nothing new. We'll listen a little bit more to his hypocrisy, and he right out lies. He lies about his John Kerry interview. All right.
Hear you talk about
I felt the
my
sparks between you.
responsibility to the, I didn't realize that, and maybe this explains quite a bit.
No, the opportunity
is that the news organization.
You see that? So Jon Stewart is trying to downplay the fact that he's on Comedy Central. He goes, "Oh, a news outlet is looking at Comedy Central, looking at me, that I have a responsibility." And Tucker Carlson, of all fucking people, says, no. You had the opportunity, and that gives you the responsibility. Because you had the opportunity. Because John Kerry, the presidential candidate, the DNC nominee, was sitting across from you. So here you are telling us, wagging your finger at us, why aren't you doing enough? Why isn't the media doing enough, to help out the average American? And yet there you are sitting across from a presidential candidate, and you're just flirting him up.
Look to Comedy Central for their cues on integrity. Responsibility to the, I didn't realize that, and maybe this explains quite a bit.
No, the opportunity
is that the news organizations look to Comedy Central for their cues on integrity. So, what I would suggest is when you talk about you're holding politicians' feet to the fire, I think that's disingenuous. I think you're.
How are you holding up? I mean, come on.
No. I don't. But my role isn't. I don't.
You
think.
can ask him a real question, don't you think? Instead of saying,
I don't think I have to. By the way, I
Did you hear that? Tucker says, well, you could ask him a real question. And Jon Stewart says, I don't think I have to. This is the spinelessness of liberals. When they're face to face with the powerful, with the politicians, with the rich, what have you, they will cower and seek others to step up when they're already on the plate. Tucker's literally just saying, why not ask him a legitimate question? And Jon Stewart actually thinks about it and says, I don't think I have to. Despite me interviewing him, despite me being across from him, my job is to be a fluffer for these politicians. The same way Seth Meyers was to Joe Biden and the same way Jimmy Fallon was to Donald Trump. And yet he has the audacity to be upset.
my role isn't. I don't.
You
think.
can ask him a real question, don't you think? Instead of saying,
I don't think I have to. By the way, I also asked him, were you in Cambodia? But I didn't really care.
So at the time, there was a right-wing smear about John Kerry's military service. Essentially, he didn't kill enough foreigners, right? And here's Jon Stewart lying. When confronted with the fact that, hey, why didn't you ask him like a real question? He says, well, I don't think I have to, despite me interviewing a presidential candidate for my large audience, primarily young audience, that like he had us in the palm of his hands. You need to understand how, popular and how influential this man was. That's why they brought him back, to put us back in line, to check liberals and anybody to the left of them and sheep herd him back to the DNC. So what does he say? Oh, well, I did ask a question. I just didn't really care about it. Look at what he says.
I don't, but my role isn't, I don't
You
think.
can ask him a real question, don't you think? Instead of saying,
I don't think I have to. By the way, I also asked him, were you in Cambodia? But I didn't really care.
So let's see that. Let's see his question about Cambodia to John Kerry, a presidential candidate. All right.
I'm sorry. Were you or were you not in Cambodia on Christmas Eve? They said, you said 5 miles, they said 3. No, I hear what you're saying. I think that's a very interesting.
That is Jon Stewart for y'all. That was his defense. Say, no, well, I did ask him a hard-hitting question. I just really didn't care about it. No, you cracked a joke. You cracked a joke about a smear. So you weren't even cracking a joke about a legitimate topic. But here you are in front of Tucker Carlson of all people. Mind you, liberals love this clip because he makes fun of Tucker's bow tie. He was so powerful and so influential at that time, Jon Stewart, that this appearance essentially ended Crossfire, which was a highly rated show, very popular. Because, the bait bro shit, right? But here, Jon Stewart is lying. He goes, no, I asked him a question. I just didn't really care about the question. No. You made a joke. Again, to further humanize John Kerry to your audience, primarily young audience. People who aren't actually that into politics, but you make it entertaining for them. So they'll watch. The more susceptible, right? The more easily influenced people. But he doesn't want that responsibility. He wants others to have that responsibility, despite him having the opportunity that others do not have. And why does he have that opportunity? Because he doesn't actually challenge power, never has and never will. And that's why he's willing to sell out Palestinians fighting for their liberation, wanting their land back, to return back to their homes. He's willing to sacrifice that to be a liberal and say, nope, I want a safe and secure settler colonial project. The Zionist existence will continue to flourish. But here we have just a little bit more self-deprecation, which is really the coward's way of dodging and avoiding questions. You beat yourself up so the audience sees this and be like, oh, well, they're going too hard on him. Or yeah, he's right. He's actually not that big of a deal. He's a small fish, huge pond, right? He's downplaying, right? His influence, his power, his significance, his role in this propaganda, media, the media machine here.
No, and I'll tell you
You
why
have
I
John
know
Kerry
it.
on your show, and you sniff his throne, and you're accusing us of partisan hackery?
Absolutely.
You've got to be kidding me. He
You're
comes
on
and you literally
CNN.
say,
The show that leads into me is puppets making crank phone calls.
Right. Comedy Central is a joke, but you added some legitimacy to it by talking about news, important things, by trying to educate people while entertaining them. But still, you're actually bringing information, and politicians are going to you. Presidential candidates are going to you. And your excuse is what? Oh, well, a puppet show follows us or leads into us? Well, then why are the politicians going to your show? Why would they want to be on your show if you're not influential, if you're not significant, if you're not going to change the way that they're perceived by the general audience? And when given that opportunity and confronted by these politicians, you just fluff them up. You're their fluffer. Let's hear it again.
Kerry on your show, and you sniff his throne, and you're accusing us of partisan hackery?
Absolutely.
You've got to be kidding me. He
You're
comes
on
and you literally
CNN.
say,
The show that leads into me is puppets making crank phone calls. What is wrong with you?
well, I'm just saying, there's
What does the network, what do the other shows have to do with the fact that Jon Stewart is interviewing a presidential candidate? And liberals love this clip because nothing is more of an arousal, an aphrodisiac to a liberal than self-righteous hypocrisy. They love that shit. They love to point the finger while doing the exact same things that they're criticizing and pretending to be a better person than you for doing it because they get away with it, especially if they're white.
Me is puppets making crank phone calls. What is wrong with you?
well, I'm just saying, there's no reason for you, when you have this marvelous opportunity not to be the guy's butt boy, to go ahead and be his butt boy.
Yes,
It's embarrassing.
I was absolutely his butt boy. I was so far. You would not believe what he ate 2 weeks ago. The interest.
You see that? Tucker says you had this opportunity and you were just his butt boy. Whatever the fuck that means. I'm not that into white culture to know what that means. But Tucker was like, you were his butt boy. And how does Jon Stewart respond to that accurate criticism? And we saw, them cuddling right there, basically. About a kiss. Little butterfly kisses. And Jon Stewart says, let me double down on the self-deprecation so that the audience doesn't realize that he accurately called me out for being not just a partisan hack, but a fluffer for these politicians. For having the opportunity to call them out, to ask them hard-hitting questions, and refusing to do so because if he actually did that, they wouldn't go on his show anymore. They would refuse. Why would politicians want to be asked legitimate questions? And what's more infuriating, more appalling, is that he's able to have the lack of self-awareness or the outright hypocrisy to demand that others who do not have this opportunity to step up, to have the spine that he does not, to do, what he is unwilling to do, what he doesn't have the courage to do, which is to risk your career to confront power.
Thing that I have is you have a responsibility to the public discourse.
and you
need to get a
fail.
job at a journalism.
I have is you have a responsibility to the public discourse, and you
You need to get a
fail
job at a journalism
miserably.
school.
So he says, you have a responsibility to the public discourse, and you have failed miserably. Not once in high school. That'd be a lie. That'd be a lie. Let's put it this way. Not once in middle school did I ever speak to anybody, friends or teachers, about, what was on CNN. Not once. Not once did I talk to them about MSNBC, Fox News, nothing like that. But I would talk to them about The Daily Show because that shit was funny. And subconsciously, the liberal politics, were slowly but surely etched into my brain. I'm telling you, Jon Stewart had all of us, all these young people that were not interested in politics otherwise, because they were watching shows on Comedy Central. And it would lead right into him, like, all right, this is kind of funny. Let me see what's up. And you felt a little bit intelligent. You felt a little bit smart. And you thought you knew what was going on. And because you weren't into politics at all, this was your entryway, your entry point. You didn't have the skills, the resources, the tools to fish out, to see the liberal propaganda, excusing atrocities like he's doing now, calling for, a two-state solution where the European white supremacist settler colonial project will continue to exist, flourish in safety, and Palestinians get their scraps. The indigenous population has to suck it up. Be rational. Allow the white man a victory. But he's over here talking about individuals failing their responsibility to the discourse when he was leading it for an entire generation, for all the young people. And a generation even before me slightly, right? But I'm telling you, like, we were the young ones watching that, seeing that, and it was shaping us, molding us. Thankfully, I hopped over to Stephen Colbert, who was actually, because of the character, willing to actually combat Democratic politicians the same way that he did the right wing, whereas Colbert was bootlicking, as we saw, John Kerry and all these Democrats, while pretending to combat Republicans. And he has the lack of self-awareness to call somebody else, a partisan hack. But he hides himself, he shields himself from accountability, from responsibility, from the influence that he actually had by saying, oh, I was on Comedy Central. We're talking about your show. We're not talking about the network. We're not talking about the other shows on the network. We're talking about you. As a man confronted with those in power, what did you choose to do? The same thing you're doing today. Mislead people.
Ability to the public discourse, and you
You need to get a
fail
job at a journalism
miserably.
school, I think.
You need to go to one. The thing that I want to say is, when you have people on for just knee-jerk reactionary talk.
Wait, I thought you were going to be funny. Come on, be funny.
No, I'm not going to be your monkey. Go ahead. I watch your
He will be for John Kerry, though. If you're powerful enough, Jon Stewart will be your monkey.
show every day, and it kills me.
I can tell you love
it's
it.
it's so painful to watch. Because we need what you do. This is such a great opportunity you have here to actually get politicians
really Jon
off
Stewart?
of their
This
marketing
anyway.
and strategy. Yeah, it's
So Tucker starts speaking over him. But Jon Stewart says this is such a unique opportunity to get politicians off of their marketing and strategy. Hear that one more time. Add a little subtitles on there.
Go ahead. I watch your show every day, and it kills me.
I can tell you love
it's
it.
it's so painful to watch. Because we need what you do. This is such a great opportunity you have here to actually get politicians
really Jon
off
Stewart?
of their
This
marketing
anyway.
and strategy.
You see that? To get politicians off their marketing. Great opportunity you have here to actually get politicians
get
Off?
politicians off of their marketing and strategy.
Off of their marketing and strategy. Unfortunately, the camera pans to Tucker there. This is Jon Stewart saying, you have such a great opportunity to get politicians off their marketing and strategy. He has the opportunity to have politicians on. And what is a better tool than comedy, the disarming power of comedy to get politicians off their strategy and marketing? But because he's on Comedy Central, because there's comedic shows on Comedy Central, because he has some gags on his show, he does not seize the opportunity to use comedy to get politicians off of their marketing and strategy in a friendly manner that exposes these politicians. If they get upset, it's even worse for them. They got to take it on the chin because it's a comedy show, right? But Jon Stewart can't even do that because it would risk his position. And if he would have done that then, he wouldn't have gotten called back from these corporate overlords over here. Viacom, I believe, still owns Comedy Central. They wouldn't have pulled up the truck of money, tossed it, and gave him, free will, complete control of the Daily Show. They wouldn't have done that if Jon Stewart actually spoke truth to power. If he took advantage of the comedic, role, the tool that he had when talking to these politicians and get them off their marketing and strategy and exposing them to the American public to add to the discourse. So no, let's be very clear. It is Jon Stewart who failed all of us. And we see it here, watch. It's a great question.
Why do you think it's hard or difficult or impossible for politicians to answer a straight, simple question?
I don't think it's hard. I just think that nobody holds their feet to the fire to do it, so they don't have to. They get to come on, shows that don't.
Were they too easy on them?
Yeah.
Not easy.
How you holding up?
You began by saying we were too hard on people and too difficult or contentious. And
I think you're,
All right, Jon Stewart, come back soon.
Jon Stewart, good of you to join us. Thank you very much.
You see that?
America.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
All right, Jon.
He knows he got exposed right there. He knows he was just exposed. He knows he put his foot in his mouth. All these liberals love this clip because he does accurately make fun of Tucker Carlson for being an embarrassment. Tucker Carlson is a garbage human being. But Jon Stewart is a fucking hypocrite. All right. Look at him. Let's replay that one more time.
Simple question.
I don't think it's hard. I just think that nobody holds their feet to the fire to do it, so they don't have to. They get to come on, shows that don't.
Were they too easy on them?
Yeah.
Not easy.
How you holding
You
up?
began by saying we were too hard on people and too difficult or contentious. And
I think you're,
All right, Jon
Yeah.
Stewart, come back soon.
Look at that face. He had nothing. He knew he fucked up.
Jon Stewart.
Oh, not the gulp. Y'all seen the little gulp? Look at it. Oh, a little gulp. He had to swallow that shit. You're reaching, Carlos. You're doing too much here. You're overanalyzing it. Well, let's pull this last clip up here. Let's put the nail on the coffin here. This was an interview that he conducted with a Palestinian, some sellout. I'm not gonna even talk about his cut, and some Zionists. Look what Jon Stewart says.
Point, if the Arab states form a more broader alliance with Israel in a genuine way, and that the United States wouldn't feel maybe that it had to be on the line there. Listen, I'm no fan of any of it. I think this cycle of violence over the 75 years is destroying the dreams of two peoples, not just the Palestinians. I think it's destroying the dream of the Israeli people as well. And
did you hear that
not
shit?
just the Palestinians. I think it's destroying the dream of the Israeli.
I think it's destroying the dreams of the Israeli people. The dream of the Zionists was to eradicate Palestinians, to expose them off the fucking land, to never allow them to return back from day one. Theodore Herzl was talking about pushing out the penniless, the peasantry, the indigenous people. You have these morons like Noam Chomsky defending the existence of kibbutz that were no different than, let's say, Jamestown here on this continent. The beginning of settler colonialism, the eradication of the indigenous population, the pushing out, the establishment of these European white supremacists. It's destroying the dream of the Israeli people. This man is nothing but a fucking Zionist. He is a Zionist because the dream of the Israeli people was to colonize and to settle the land of Palestine, to push out the Christian and Muslim Palestinians, and to weaponize and oppress the Palestinian Jews. And if you're a Jewish person who is not European, they will sterilize you because they don't want your filthy, non-European bloodline to grow in their settler colonial project. So it isn't about being Jewish. It's about being European first and foremost and weaponizing Judaism in the name of Zionism. And Jon Stewart is nothing but a liberal Zionist propagandist. Like and subscribe if you want to see these liberals get called out. If you're tired of them asking for your money here on these streaming sites. It's not just the threat of the right. It's not just the wolf. It's the liberal fox that needs to get put down as well.